My sister insisted I surrogate her baby because she's a fitness influencer who can't ruin her body while I'm just a teacher who doesn't need to look perfect. My sister Brooke called me in March demanding I carry her baby because pregnancy would ruin her fitness influencer career while I was just a third-grade teacher whose body didn't matter for my job. She had 850,000 followers and sponsorships worth $400,000 annually that required maintaining her physique. She actually said my body was already ordinary, so 9 months of pregnancy wouldn't affect my career or dating prospects the way it would devastate her income and brand. I told her this was insane and she couldn't expect me to undergo pregnancy because she thought her body was more valuable than mine. She said I was being selfish, and that this was about her family's financial security. Her husband Blake earned $60,000 as a personal trainer, while she made 6 figures from sponsored posts and workout programs. Losing her income would destroy their lifestyle. She said I wore loose clothing anyway and worked with children who wouldn't judge my appearance. Meanwhile, she filmed content in sports bras and had to maintain visible abs year-round. When I refused, she started calling every single day with new arguments about why I should surrogate instead of carrying her own child. By April, Brooke had recruited our mother to the pressure campaign. Mom called saying Brooke's income supported the entire family, including paying for our parents' mortgage after Dad's business failed 2 years ago. She said it would be devastating to watch Brooke lose everything when there was a simple solution available. I asked why Brooke couldn't just carry her own baby, and Mom said fitness influencers had different career demands than regular people. She actually used the phrase regular people when talking about me. She said Brooke had worked hard to build her platform and deserved support from family. I pointed out that I'd worked hard to become a teacher, and my body autonomy mattered just as much as Brooke's career. Mom got quiet, then said she needed me to think about what was best for everyone, not just myself. Our father joined next, saying surrogacy was becoming normalized, and thousands of women carried babies for others successfully. He sent me articles about teachers who worked through entire pregnancies without issues. He said my job had tenure protection, while Brooke's income depended entirely on her appearance and audience perception. Brooke's husband Blake started texting me constantly with offers of payment and medical coverage. He said they'd pay me $80,000 for my time plus cover all medical expenses and maternity clothes. He sent me links to surrogacy agencies showing this was standard compensation. When I said no amount of money would make me rent out my uterus, he called me greedy for demanding more. I told him I wasn't negotiating a price because my body wasn't for sale at any amount. He switched tactics, saying I'd be giving them the gift of parenthood, and how could I deny them that when I had the ability to help? He said Brooke was devastated and crying every night about potentially losing her career. He claimed they'd tried other options, but no surrogacy agency would work with them because they wanted Brooke to carry the baby herself, unless there was a medical reason she couldn't. The agencies apparently had policies against vanity surrogacies where healthy women avoided pregnancy for cosmetic or career reasons. That's why they needed a family member to help them. The harassment escalated when Brooke posted on social media about struggling with infertility and her journey to parenthood. She didn't explicitly lie and say she couldn't get pregnant, but she heavily implied it through vague posts about obstacles and challenges. Her followers flooded the comments with support and shared their own fertility struggles. Brooke let them believe she had medical issues preventing her from carrying a baby. Then she started posting about me, though she didn't use my name. She made content about unsupportive family members who refused to help during difficult times. She talked about how painful it was when people you love won't be there for you. Her followers started attacking me in my Instagram DMs even though my account was private. Somehow they'd figured out who I was and sent messages calling me selfish and heartless. One woman wrote that I should be ashamed for abandoning my sister during an infertility crisis. Another said teachers should have more compassion. I was getting dozens of hate messages daily from strangers who thought I was refusing to help my infertile sister when the truth was she just didn't want to get pregnant. I hired a private investigator named Olivia because something about the whole situation felt wrong. Brooke was 28 and healthy with no history of reproductive issues. Her desperation to avoid pregnancy seemed extreme even for someone whose career depended on her appearance. Olivia was a former journalist who specialized in background investigations. She started digging into Brooke's medical history and financial records. What she found changed everything. 8 months ago, Brooke had gotten a tummy tuck and breast augmentation from a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. The procedures cost $35,000 and she'd paid cash to avoid insurance records. Her surgeon had explicitly documented that she should avoid pregnancy for at least 2 years because carrying a baby could damage the surgical results and require expensive revision procedures. The tummy tuck involved tightening abdominal muscles that pregnancy would separate again. The breast implants could shift or develop complications during pregnancy and breastfeeding. Brooke's entire brand was built on natural fitness results from her workout programs. She sold digital workout guides promising women could achieve her body through exercise and nutrition alone. If her followers discovered her physique came from plastic surgery, it would destroy her credibility and tank her income. I confronted Brooke with the surgical records and watched her face go white. She tried to grab the papers from my hands, but I pulled them away. "Where did you get those?" she demanded, and her voice shook. "That's private medical information. You had no right to investigate me." I told her I had every right to investigate why my sister was trying to manipulate me into pregnancy. I said the real reason she wanted a surrogate wasn't career preservation, but covering up the fact that she'd lied to hundreds of thousands of people about how she got her body. She started crying, saying I was destroying everything she'd built. She said her followers trusted her, and finding out she'd had surgery would make them feel betrayed and deceived. I pointed out that they should feel betrayed because she'd been selling them workout programs based on a complete lie. She'd taken their money promising results she'd achieved through surgery, not exercise. That was fraud, not just vanity. Brooke said I didn't understand the pressure of social media and maintaining a brand. She said everyone got cosmetic procedures and it didn't mean her fitness advice wasn't valid. I told her that was exactly what it meant when her entire business model was natural transformation through her programs. My mother called that evening after Brooke told her about the confrontation. She asked why I'd hired an investigator instead of just trusting family. I explained that weeks of harassment and manipulation had made trust impossible. I told her about the plastic surgery and how Brooke was lying to her followers about achieving her body naturally. Mom went quiet, then said she didn't know about the surgeries. She admitted Brooke had always been secretive about her appearance maintenance, but she'd assumed it was just intense dieting and professional training. Learning that Brooke had cosmetic procedures and was building her business on false claims made her uncomfortable. But she still thought I should help carry the baby to protect Brooke's career and financial stability. She said families should support each other even when they disagree with choices. I asked if she'd want me to lie and participate in fraud just to enable Brooke's deception. She said it wasn't fraud, it was just not sharing every detail of her fitness journey. I told her that when you sell programs promising specific results while hiding the fact you achieved those results through surgery, that's textbook deceptive marketing. My father took a harder line when he called. He said I was being self-righteous and judgmental about choices that weren't my business. He claimed Brooke's surgical decisions were private and separate from whether I should help her become a parent. I pointed out the surgery was directly relevant because it explained her desperation for a surrogate. She wasn't asking for help with fertility issues. She was asking me to cover up her lies by letting her avoid pregnancy that would expose her cosmetic work. Dad said I was twisting things and making Brooke sound worse than she was. He insisted she genuinely wanted a baby, and my refusal to help was cruel regardless of her reasons for not carrying it herself. He said I'd always been jealous of Brooke's success and was using this situation to hurt her. I asked him why he thought refusing to undergo pregnancy was jealousy instead of basic bodily autonomy. He didn't have an answer for that and changed the subject to how much Brooke had done for the family financially. He said she'd been generous with her money and I should be generous with my time and body in return. The family pressure intensified over the next 2 weeks. My aunt called saying she'd heard I was being difficult about helping Brooke have a baby. Apparently, Brooke had told extended family that I'd agreed to surrogate but was now backing out and causing problems. This was a complete lie. I'd never agreed to anything. My aunt said breaking a promise about something so important was shameful and that Brooke was devastated by my betrayal. When I explained I'd never made any promise and that Brooke was lying about that too, my aunt said I must have miscommunicated and given Brooke the wrong impression. She suggested I reconsider to make peace in the family. My cousin texted asking why I was being stubborn about something that would only affect me temporarily, but would give Brooke and Blake a lifetime of happiness. She said 9 months wasn't that long in the grand scheme of things, and I should think about the bigger picture. None of them knew about the plastic surgery or Brooke's deception. They all believed her story about career demands preventing her from carrying a baby. I decided to force Brooke's hand by calling her biggest sponsor directly. The company was a fitness apparel brand called ActiveCore that paid her $150,000 annually for exclusive content and promotion. I spoke with their marketing director, Diana Wolf, and explained the situation. I told her Brooke was trying to manipulate me into surrogacy to hide the fact she'd had cosmetic procedures while marketing herself as achieving her fitness results naturally. I said I thought the company should know they were paying someone who was fundamentally lying about the basis of their brand partnership. Diana went quiet for a long moment, then thanked me for the information. She said they'd need to investigate and verify the claims. She also said that if the allegations were true, it would constitute a material breach of Brooke's endorsement contract, which required her to disclose any factors materially affecting her fitness content authenticity. 2 days later, Diana called back confirming they'd obtained verification of Brooke's surgical history. ActiveCore was terminating her contract effective immediately and demanding return of payments made under false pretenses. Brooke called me screaming within an hour of losing her biggest sponsor. She said I destroyed her career and her life. She accused me of being vindictive and jealous and deliberately sabotaging her success. I told her calmly that she destroyed her own career by building it on lies and then trying to manipulate family members into covering up those lies. I said every consequence she was facing was the direct result of her own choices and deceptions. She started crying, saying she'd lose everything: her house, her car, her entire lifestyle. I reminded her she'd been willing to force me into 9 months of pregnancy to prevent exactly these consequences. I asked why she thought avoiding her own discomfort was more important than protecting me from physical risk and bodily violation. She said it wasn't the same and I was being dramatic, calling surrogacy a violation. I told her that any use of someone's body against their will or through manipulation was a violation by definition. She hung up on me, still crying. The fallout happened fast. 3 more sponsors dropped Brooke once ActiveCore's decision went public. Her follower count started declining as word spread about the plastic surgery and false advertising. Several online fitness forums picked up the story discussing influencer authenticity and deceptive marketing practices. Former customers who'd bought her workout programs started demanding refunds, saying they'd been sold results that were impossible without surgery. A consumer protection lawyer reached out to me asking if I'd be willing to testify in a potential class action lawsuit against Brooke for fraud. She'd made millions over 4 years selling digital fitness programs with before and after photos that were partially the result of surgical intervention, not just her training methods. The lawyer said they had evidence Brooke knew her results weren't replicable through exercise alone, but continued marketing programs promising her physique was achievable naturally. My mother called asking me to fix the situation. She said Brooke was having a breakdown and couldn't function. She'd locked herself in her bedroom for 3 days, refusing to eat or see anyone. Blake was panicking about their finances because they'd been living beyond their means, assuming Brooke's income would continue growing. They owed $12,000 in credit card debt, and their mortgage was $4,500 monthly, which they couldn't afford on Blake's salary alone. Mom said I needed to call the sponsors and explain that this was all a misunderstanding. I asked what misunderstanding she meant, since Brooke had objectively gotten plastic surgery and objectively lied about it to her followers and sponsors. Mom said families should protect each other, not expose them to consequences. I pointed out that I'd tried to protect myself by refusing surrogacy, and the family had attacked me for it. Now Brooke was facing natural consequences of her own deception, and I wasn't going to rescue her. My father showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. He let himself in using the emergency key I'd given him years ago for actual emergencies. He said we needed to talk about fixing things with Brooke. I told him there was nothing to fix because I hadn't broken anything. He said my refusal to help, combined with exposing her surgical history, had pushed Brooke to the edge financially and emotionally. I asked why he thought my boundaries were the problem instead of Brooke's lies and manipulation. He said I was being selfish and punishing Brooke for asking for help. I reminded him she didn't ask for help, she demanded my body for 9 months while building a campaign of family pressure and public manipulation. He said I was exaggerating how bad it had been. I showed him the hate messages I'd received from her followers attacking me based on her implied false narrative about infertility struggles. He looked uncomfortable but said Brooke was still my sister and I should want to help her even if her methods were imperfect. I asked my father directly if he thought Brooke's career and financial comfort were more important than my bodily autonomy. He hesitated, then said it wasn't that simple. I told him it actually was that simple, and his hesitation revealed everything about how he valued his daughters differently. He'd spent decades prioritizing Brooke's needs and treating my life as less important because it was less profitable and less glamorous. Teaching 3rd grade didn't come with Instagram fame or sponsor money, so my work had less value in his eyes. He started to argue, but I cut him off. I said I wanted him to leave my apartment and not contact me until he could acknowledge that demanding someone undergo pregnancy against their will was wrong regardless of the reasons. He looked shocked that I was setting this boundary. He said I was overreacting and being dramatic. I opened my door and waited. He eventually left looking confused and hurt that I wasn't backing down. The next development surprised me. Blake called and asked if we could meet for coffee. His voice sounded different from the aggressive texts he'd sent weeks ago. Tired and defeated rather than demanding. I agreed to meet at a neutral location. When he arrived, he looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes and unwashed hair. He sat down and immediately apologized for his role in pressuring me. He said he'd been following Brooke's lead without really thinking about what they were asking me to do. He admitted he'd treated me acquiring a surrogate as a logistics problem to solve, rather than a person being asked to make a massive sacrifice. His apology felt genuine in a way nothing from my parents had. I asked him what changed his perspective. He said watching everything collapse had made him realize Brooke's priorities were completely distorted and he'd enabled that distortion. Blake told me things I hadn't known about their relationship. Brooke had gotten the plastic surgery without consulting him and put it on a credit card he didn't know about. He'd discovered it only after she'd already recovered when he found the surgical aftercare instructions. She'd told him the procedures were necessary for her career and their financial future. He'd been uncomfortable with the deception about her natural fitness results, but Brooke convinced him it didn't matter because her workout advice was still valid. She said everyone in fitness had some cosmetic help and disclosing it would just make her less competitive. Blake had gone along with it to avoid conflict. Then when she'd decided she wanted a baby but couldn't risk pregnancy exposing the surgeries, she'd presented surrogacy as the only option. Blake had initially suggested they wait 2 years until the surgical healing period ended, but Brooke said she wanted a baby now, and I was the obvious solution. She'd started the pressure campaign before he fully understood what she was planning. I asked Blake why he didn't intervene when the family pressure got extreme. He admitted he'd been conflict avoidant and scared of Brooke's reaction if he challenged her. She had the money and the power in their relationship. He'd felt increasingly uncomfortable as the situation escalated but didn't know how to stop it. When Brooke started posting about infertility struggles on social media, Blake said he'd felt sick knowing she was lying to hundreds of thousands of people. He'd tried to talk to her about being honest, but she'd shut him down, saying he didn't understand how social media worked. Everything was narrative and positioning. Her followers didn't need to know every detail. Blake said watching her manipulate public sympathy while attacking me privately had shown him who his wife really was. He was considering divorce. He couldn't stay with someone whose values were so fundamentally misaligned with his own. The class action lawsuit against Brooke moved forward. The consumer protection attorney had found over 200 women who'd purchased her programs after seeing her transformation photos and testimonials claiming natural results. Many had spent additional money on nutritional supplements and training accessories Brooke promoted. The total potential damages exceeded $2 million. Brooke tried to claim her programs were still effective regardless of her surgical procedures, but the plaintiffs argued they'd been sold a false promise. They'd paid for programs specifically advertised as achieving Brooke's exact physique through exercise alone. If surgical intervention was part of her results, the programs were inherently deceptive. The lawyer asked if I'd provide testimony about Brooke's admission that her body was unachievable through exercise alone. I agreed. Her own words about needing surrogacy because pregnancy would ruin her surgical results proved she knew her physique wasn't maintainable naturally. Brooke's legal team tried to depose me as part of their defense. They wanted to argue I'd maliciously interfered with her business out of jealousy. During the deposition, Brooke's attorney asked aggressive questions about my motivations for investigating her and contacting her sponsors. I explained clearly that I'd investigated because months of harassment and manipulation made me suspicious of the real reasons behind her surrogacy demands. I'd contacted ActiveCore because they had a right to know they were paying someone who was fundamentally deceiving their audience about the basis of their fitness expertise. The attorney tried to frame my actions as vindictive, but I remained calm. I said refusing to participate in fraud and standing up to coercion weren't vindictive. They were reasonable responses to impossible pressure. The deposition lasted 4 hours, and the attorney never got me to admit to any malicious intent because I genuinely hadn't acted from malice. I'd acted from self-protection and a belief that companies and consumers deserved honesty. The settlement negotiations took 3 months. Brooke's insurance didn't cover fraud claims, so she was personally liable for damages. Her legal team negotiated a settlement of $800,000 to be paid over 5 years, with the first $200,000 due immediately. Brooke and Blake had to sell their house to make the initial payment. They moved into a small rental apartment, and Blake took a second job to help cover expenses. Brooke tried launching a new fitness brand focused on honesty and realistic expectations, but her reputation was too damaged. Most of her followers had left, and no major sponsors would work with her. She ended up getting a regular job as a personal trainer at a local gym, making $45,000 annually. The contrast between her former lifestyle and her new reality was stark. From luxury car and designer clothes to used vehicle and discount stores. My parents struggled to accept what had happened. My mother kept trying to mediate between Brooke and me, suggesting we needed to move forward as a family. I told her I was willing to be civil, but I wasn't going to pretend the past year hadn't happened, or that Brooke had apologized meaningfully. Brooke had never actually said she was sorry for trying to coerce me into surrogacy. She'd only expressed anger about the consequences she faced for her own deception. My mother said I was being stubborn and holding grudges. I explained there was a difference between holding grudges and maintaining boundaries with someone who'd shown they'd manipulate and pressure me to serve their interests. My father remained convinced I'd overreacted and destroyed Brooke's life unnecessarily. He said I could have just said no to surrogacy without exposing the plastic surgery. I pointed out that Brooke's public deception about infertility struggles and her campaign to paint me as unsupportive made exposure necessary. She'd tried to weaponize public opinion against me based on lies. 6 months after everything collapsed, I started therapy with a counselor named Dr. Raina Oakes, who specialized in family dynamics and boundary issues. I'd been carrying tremendous guilt about whether I'd done the right thing. Part of me wondered if I should have just refused the surrogacy privately without investigating or exposing Brooke. Dr. Oakes helped me understand that Brooke's deception and manipulation had created a situation where private refusal wasn't sufficient. When someone builds a public narrative designed to pressure and shame you, then exposing the truth behind that narrative becomes self-defense, not revenge. She explained that boundary violations severe enough to threaten your bodily autonomy require proportional responses. Brooke had tried to recruit hundreds of thousands of social media followers to pressure me through lies about infertility. Correcting those lies wasn't disproportionate, it was necessary. Dr. Oakes also helped me process my family's response. She explained that when family systems are built on one person being prioritized, everyone else being expected to accommodate the dynamic persists until someone disrupts it. I'd been the accommodating daughter my entire life. Quiet teacher with modest lifestyle, not demanding attention or resources, while Brooke got praised and supported for her public success. When I finally refused to sacrifice for Brooke's benefit, it threatened the whole family's equilibrium. They'd responded with aggression, trying to force me back into my assigned role. Understanding this pattern helped me see their pressure campaign wasn't about surrogacy. Specifically, it was about maintaining hierarchy where Brooke's needs always came first. Dr. Oakes said my refusal, followed by exposure of Brooke's lies, had shattered that hierarchy permanently, which was healthy even though it felt devastating. Blake filed for divorce 8 months after the settlement. He told me during a brief phone call that he'd tried to make it work, but Brooke blamed him for not defending her better during the lawsuit. She said if he'd been a better husband with higher income, she wouldn't have needed to rely so heavily on influencer sponsorships. She wouldn't have felt pressure to maintain impossible standards. Blake said living with someone who never took accountability for her own choices was exhausting. He'd realized their entire relationship had been built on him supporting her ambitions while his own needs and values were dismissed. The divorce was finalized quickly since they had no children and limited assets after selling the house for settlement money. Blake moved to another state for a fresh start. I wished him well and meant it. He'd apologized genuinely and shown growth. That counted for something. A year after the initial surrogacy demand, my mother invited me to family dinner at her house. She said Brooke would be there and asked if I could be civil. I said I'd be polite, but I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. When I arrived, Brooke was already there, looking different from her influencer days. She'd gained some weight, which made her look healthier, actually. Less obsessed with visible abs. We nodded at each other but didn't speak. Dinner was awkward, with my father making forced conversation about neutral topics. Toward the end, Brooke suddenly spoke. She said she'd been in therapy working on accountability. She said she owed me an apology for trying to pressure me into surrogacy. Her voice was flat and rehearsed, but at least she said the words. I asked if she understood why what she'd done was wrong. She said she'd been desperate and made bad choices. I asked if she'd do it differently now. She paused, then said she didn't know. She said she still thought I could have helped her without exposing everything publicly. I told her that was the wrong answer, and her apology was hollow if she still thought I'd been wrong to protect myself. My mother tried to intervene, saying we should focus on moving forward, not rehashing the past. I told her the past was relevant when Brooke still didn't genuinely understand she'd been wrong. Brooke said she'd lost everything: her career, her marriage, her reputation, and I'd gotten to stay comfortable in my quiet life. I stood up to leave. I told Brooke her losses were consequences of her own deception and manipulation, not of my refusal to participate. I said until she could acknowledge that trying to coerce someone into pregnancy was fundamentally wrong, regardless of consequences, we had nothing more to discuss. I left the dinner and drove home feeling clear that I'd made the right choice. Maintaining boundaries meant accepting some family relationships might never recover. That was unfortunate, but necessary. 2 years after everything started, I received a message from a woman named Tessa, who'd been one of the plaintiffs in the class action lawsuit. She said she wanted to thank me for testifying and helping expose the fraud. She'd spent $2,000 on Brooke's programs and supplements while feeling increasingly defeated that she couldn't achieve the promised results. Learning that Brooke's physique required surgery had been initially devastating but ultimately freeing. She'd stopped punishing herself for failing to look like someone whose body was surgically altered. She'd found a healthier relationship with fitness focused on strength and well-being rather than appearance. Tessa said my testimony had helped her and hundreds of other women escape the trap of comparing themselves to impossible standards. Reading her message made me cry. The past 2 years had been painful, but they'd served a purpose beyond just protecting myself. I never fully reconciled with Brooke, though we maintained distant civil contact at occasional family gatherings. She eventually started a blog about realistic fitness and the dangers of cosmetic surgery addiction. She got maybe 5,000 followers compared to her previous platform, but they were genuine. She wrote about her mistakes and the cost of prioritizing appearance over integrity. I don't know if she ever truly understood the violation she'd attempted, or just learned to perform accountability convincingly. Either way, she was no longer in a position to pressure anyone about anything. My parents gradually accepted that our family would never return to its previous dynamic. My mother stopped trying to force reconciliation. My father remained somewhat distant, clearly disappointed I wouldn't simply forgive and forget. I was okay with that. I'd learned that self-protection sometimes means accepting permanent changes in relationships. The alternative was sacrificing myself to keep others comfortable, and I was done doing that. 5 years later, I was teaching 4th grade and had been promoted to lead teacher for my school. I'd gotten married to a man named Colin who respected my boundaries and supported my choices. My life was quiet and normal, exactly how I wanted it. Brooke was managing a small gym and seemed content in her reduced circumstances. She'd started dating someone new, a physical therapist who apparently didn't care about her past drama. Our family had settled into a new equilibrium where Brooke wasn't automatically centered, and my needs weren't automatically dismissed. Progress felt incremental but real. The biggest change was internal. I'd learned to value my own judgment and protect my autonomy even when everyone around me said I was wrong. That confidence affected everything in my life, from my teaching to my relationships. Standing up to my family's coercion had been terrifying and costly, but it had taught me that I could trust myself. That lesson was worth every uncomfortable conversation and lost relationship. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.